You knew the moment you signed your own name on that shipment manifest that you had crossed a line you could never walk back across. That signature would follow you for the rest of your life, and somewhere deep in your chest, you already knew it. You were 29 years old, American-born, raised in San Antonio, Texas, the son of a man who came across the border with $43 and a first name that nobody on this side of the Rio Grande ever pronounced correctly. Your mother is from Corpus Christi, third-generation American, a woman who taught Sunday school and ironed her blouses every single morning before work. You grew up in a house where two worlds lived under one roof, and you learned very early how to navigate both of them without ever fully belonging to either. You are not a criminal. You want to be very clear about that. You went to San Antonio College for 2 years, studied business administration, got a job at a logistics company on the north side of town, making $38,000 a year, and you paid your taxes. You were building something. You had a plan. Your father's name is Ernesto. You have never once called him by that name. To you, he has always been Papa, and that word carries more weight than any sentence you could construct around it. He came to this country and built a modest trucking operation out of nothing, 3 rigs, 2 drivers, a small office off Highway 90, and a reputation for reliability. What you did not understand until you were 24 years old is that the reliability your father built was not just for furniture warehouses and auto parts suppliers. There were other clients. There had always been other clients. The first time your Uncle Marco sat you down and explained the arrangement, you stood up and walked out of the room. That was your first opportunity to leave. You remember the drive home that night, both hands on the wheel, doing exactly 62 miles per hour on I-35, thinking about how clean your hands were. You told yourself you would never go back to that table. But you went back. 14 months later, when your mother's medical bills reached $91,000 and your father's trucking business was 6 weeks from collapse, you went back to that table and you sat down. And that was the turning point, not the signature, not the first delivery, not the night the money started moving through your account. It was that moment you pulled out the chair and sat down, because everything that came after was just the cost of that one decision, dressed up in different clothes. The arrangement was simple on the surface. You used your position at the logistics company to approve manifests, redirect shipments, and flag certain routes as clear. You never touched the product. You told yourself that distinction mattered. You received $6,500 per approved route, cash, in a sealed envelope left inside your car on the 3rd Thursday of every month. For 11 months, you told yourself this was temporary. You told yourself you were doing it for your family. You told yourself that the people making real decisions were somewhere else, far above you, and that your role was so small it barely registered in the machinery of what was happening. Your wife, Elena, noticed the change before you did. She noticed it in the way you checked your phone at dinner and then set it face down on the table. She noticed it in the way you stopped talking about your 5-year plan, the house in Bourne, the savings account you had been building together. She asked you twice what was wrong, and both times you told her you were stressed about work. On a Saturday morning in October, she stood in the kitchen doorway and looked at you with an expression you had never seen on her face before. Something between love and suspicion, and she said quietly that she didn't recognize you anymore. You poured your coffee and told her she was being dramatic. That was the last honest conversation you would have with her for almost 2 years. By month 18, you were not approving routes anymore. You were coordinating them. The envelope in your car became a transfer to a shell account, $14,000 every 3 weeks, and you had a second phone, a prepaid, with a number that only 4 people in the world knew. You told yourself you were still just a logistics man. You told yourself the distance between you and the real operation was still wide enough to protect you. But you understood, on some level, you kept very quiet and very still inside yourself, that the distance had already closed. The cliffhanger you never saw coming arrived on a Tuesday afternoon in March when a federal agent named Reyes walked into your office at 2:17 p.m., sat down across from you without being invited, and placed a photograph on your desk that showed you shaking hands with Marcos outside a warehouse in Laredo that you had visited exactly once, 6 months prior. You did not sleep that night. You lay next to Elena in the dark, listening to her breathe, and you understood for the first time with complete clarity that the life you had been protecting had already ended. You just hadn't told your body yet. The next morning, you called a lawyer. He charged $450 for the first consultation and told you that what you were describing was a federal RICO matter, and that your exposure, conservatively estimated, was between 12 and 20 years. You tried to tell your father. You drove to his office on a Thursday and sat across from him at his desk, the same desk he had used for 19 years, the surface worn smooth where his forearms always rested. He looked at you for a long moment, and then he said, in Spanish, that some doors, once you walk through them, don't open from the inside. He didn't say anything else. He didn't have to. The cooperation agreement took 4 months to negotiate. You gave them root data, account numbers, 3 names above Marcos in the organizational structure, and a timeline that the federal prosecutors described as highly detailed. In exchange, you received a reduced charge, conspiracy to facilitate drug trafficking, and a sentencing recommendation of 63 months in a federal correctional institution. The judge in the Western District of Texas accepted the recommendation on a cold Wednesday morning in January. Elena was not in the courtroom. She had filed for divorce 11 weeks earlier. The papers were served to you at your father's house, where you had been staying since the indictment. You reported to the Federal Correctional Institution in Bastrop, Texas, on a gray February morning, carrying a clear plastic bag with a change of clothes and a paperback book you would never finish. The intake officer processed you in 47 minutes. You were assigned a bunk in a unit with 64 other men. You were 31 years old. You had $112 in a commissary account. You had a release date that was 1,890 days away. Inside, you had time, more time than you had ever had in your life, and nowhere to spend it except inside your own head. You thought about Elena and the way she used to leave the kitchen light on when she went to bed before you. You thought about your mother, who had recovered from her illness and now lived alone in a house that your criminal money had helped keep. You thought about the $38,000 a year job and the ordinary life that had felt like not enough. You had wanted more. You had wanted to be the son who fixed everything. You had wanted to be the man who held both worlds together. The second cliffhanger arrived quietly, not as a dramatic event, but as a letter, a single page from Elena written 8 months into your sentence, that contained 3 sentences and no return address, the last of which read, simply, that she hoped you found whatever it was you were looking for, because she never understood what you were trying to do. That letter sat on your bunk for 11 days before you put it in the back of your personal folder, behind your legal documents, where you could stop looking at it. You never wrote back. You told yourself you were protecting her from further contact with anything connected to your case. But the truth, the one you carried quietly in the middle of your chest, was that you did not know what to say to a woman who had asked you a simple, clean question and never gotten an honest answer. You are the cartel's American-born son, and that is the darkest irony of everything. You were never supposed to be in this story. You were the exit strategy. You were the one who was supposed to take the American education and the American address and the American last name and walk your family into a clean future. Instead, you became the deepest proof that the reach of that world doesn't stop at a border or a bloodline or a Sunday school. It follows the ones who try hardest to leave it behind. When your release date finally arrives, you will walk out of Bastrop with $312.50 in gate money, a bus voucher, and a federal conviction that will follow every job application and every lease agreement and every background check for the rest of your life. Your father will be waiting in the parking lot. He will be older, smaller, quieter. You will get in his truck and he will drive without speaking. And somewhere on that drive back through the Texas Hill Country, you will realize that you are exactly the man you swore, at 23 years old, you would never allow yourself to become. The road will stretch out ahead of you, long and flat and open. And for the first time in your life, you will have absolutely no idea what comes next.